Thank you. This is awesome. I'm going to put this right here. So first, I just want to thank Shauna for giving me the opportunity. Betts, yeah, B-E-T-T-S, Clint, as in Clint Eastwood. I really was named after him. First, I want to thank Shauna for giving me the opportunity to explain what I do every day. My wife is here, but I don't think she actually knows what I do. So this is probably a good opportunity for her. And I'm confident my mom has no idea. And every time I try to explain it to her, it kind of only exasperates the problem a little bit. So now I can hopefully show her the recording of my presentation once it's published on YouTube. And with the help of, I have 4 slides, maybe she'll finally be proud of me. Hopefully. But I must say it is a real honor to be asked by someone I consider to be a master networker, your very own Professor Shauna Theobald, to come and speak to all of you about Beehive startups and about networking. No one knows this subject better than Shauna, and I'm just hoping I don't embarrass myself up here a little bit in front of her, because UVU is actually super lucky to have Shauna as the director of the Entrepreneurship Institute. You're even luckier to be able to learn from her and the guest presenter. She easily manages to get to come here every week. I think she asked me on Thursday, and I immediately said yes. Shauna has this way of just immediately making you say yes to things. And so, while I'm sure every guest speaker who comes here cares about giving back to the entrepreneurial community and imparting their wisdom onto all of you, the main reason they come here is out of respect and admiration for Shauna. And at the very least, that's a big part of why I'm here. But I'm here to tell you a little bit about Beehive Startups, a website I founded and launched last October with the help of Izeni, an incredible software development firm located in Provo. And you'll know more about Izeni once Gabe gets up here and drops some knowledge on all of you about, actually building things, which is something I don't do. Beehive Startups is simply a website dedicated to covering the startup scene in Utah. We highlight awesome startup companies, we report Utah business and startup news, and we conduct in-depth interviews with Utah's most exciting entrepreneurs about their latest ventures, past failures, and greatest achievements. More than that, though, we're committed to building a startup community we can be proud to be a part of and to call home. In his book titled Startup Communities, venture capitalist and author Brad Feld talks about Boulder, Colorado's incredibly successful startup community. He says the community is defined by a strong sense of collaboration and philosophy of giving before you get. If you contribute, you are rewarded, often in unexpected ways. At the same time, especially if it's a small community, it's particularly intolerant of bad actors. If you aren't sincere, constructive, and collaborative, the community behaves accordingly. And I have just one piece of networking and advice, and that is to be sincere. The reaction we have received from the startup community here in Utah since we launched Beehive Startups has been nothing short of incredible. Just a couple of months ago, I remember compiling a list of 20 Utah entrepreneurs I wanted to interview and write about for Beehive Startups. 17 of the people on that list I had never met before in my life. I sent an email to each person on the list, hoping to at least receive a response back from the 2 or 3 people I knew. Within 48 hours, I had received an email back from every single person on my list, and every single one of them agreed to be interviewed for Beehive Startups. And most of them even asked how they could help spread the word on our new site. And I was kind of blown away. And I believe that response can be attributed to one thing, which is sincerity. I didn't send the same generic email to those 20 entrepreneurs. Each person received a different, unique email. Before I wrote a word, I did as much research as possible on each of them and the company they founded. While writing each email, I was careful not to pitch them anything. I barely talked about Beehive Startups and didn't talk about myself at all. I mainly just focused on them. I wanted to write about them because I believe they each had an interesting story to tell, stories that could benefit every member of the startup community here in Utah. For the next couple of weeks, I conducted at least 2 or 3 interviews a day. I would always drive to their office. I made sure to show up on time. I made sure to come prepared with interesting questions and at least a basic understanding of what it is they did. I recorded each interview so I could play it back later and write it all down. Then once the interview was over, I began to write. I wanted to write something they would share with their friends on Facebook and their followers on Twitter. I wanted to capture what made them tick. I wanted to tell their stories because I was genuinely interested and I genuinely cared, and I think that's important. Everyone in this room has a talent. Mine just happens to be writing and storytelling. I don't know why or how, but I've always had a knack for it, and it has kind of become my way of networking and meeting interesting people. One thing about Beehive Startups, we do not publish press releases. Well-written, high-quality, informative content is what we hope will set us apart. I honestly believe the rapid success we've experienced is due to the fact that we genuinely care about growing Utah's startup community, and I believe our content reflects that. We care just as much, if not more, about the startup with just 2 founders working in a garage trying to push their minimum viable product as we do about the companies in this state worth over $1 billion. And I believe in order to build this community into something we can be proud of, we need to celebrate every entrepreneur willing to put themselves on the line to start a business, to disrupt the status quo, and to change the world. And as gimmicky and as ridiculous as that sounds, that is exactly the role of an entrepreneur, is to change the world. And yesterday we published a story on Cotopaxi, an outdoor gear startup set to launch in Utah in less than 60 days. Davis Smith is the founder of the company. Prior to working on Cotopaxi, he was responsible for building the largest pool table retailer in the United States, and more recently, the largest e-commerce site in Brazil. In our story, we barely focus on those 2 companies because I was more interested in why he walked away from both of them to start an outdoor gear brand here in Utah. And I thought it might be constructive just to read an excerpt from our story. While attending BYU, Smith and his wife enrolled in an internship program that sent them to work with a nonprofit organization in Peru. They took that trip 13 years ago, but the memory of a little boy with a shoe shine kit has never strayed too far from Smith's mind. We went up to Cusco to see Machu Picchu, and then we were in the city. And when we were in the city, we befriended this little shoe shining kid named Edgar, said Smith. We started to bring him food. Every time we bought him a meal, we'd buy an extra meal for little Edgar. It was the highlight of our day. Every day we'd find him, and you could see how much it meant to him, and it meant a lot to us. On their exciting adventure to a foreign country, the young couple from Utah thought Edgar, the happy-go-lucky shoe-shining boy, was the highlight of their day. It's Edgar, not Machu Picchu, one of the most beautiful places in the world, that preoccupies Smith's memories from his time in Peru, and there's one memory in particular he still can't shake. It was our last night in Cusco, and as we were walking up to our hotel, we saw 2 little boys cuddled against each other on the side of the street, said Smith. My wife recognized one of the little boys as our friend Edgar, and so I walked across, and sure enough, I also recognized his outfit and then him. Edgar was sleeping on the side of the street because he had lost his most valuable possession and was too afraid to go home to face his father. He was scared his father would beat him for losing the shoe-shining kit that helped support their family, said Smith. Smith and his wife gave young Edgar what little money the 2 poor college students had and walked away wishing there was more they could do. The next day, as they were boarding the bus headed to the airport, a smiling Edgar appeared. He ran up to the bus and he saw us through the window, said Smith. He'd bought this bag of candy to sell on the streets with the money we gave him. He kept running next to the bus and waving goodbye as we drove away. I never saw him again. The co-founder and co-CEO of Warby Parker, Neil Blumenthal, who was a friend, actually, and former classmate of Smith's from his time at the Wharton School, has been quoted as saying, "It's not about the amount of wealth you can accumulate, it's about the impact and change you can create." Smith walked away from 2 companies, successful startups by any measure, to try his hand at changing the world. He did it because he believes a great entrepreneur should never be in it for the money. The money will come, but it's nowhere near the greatest possible reward. Affecting change and making an impact is far more important to Smith at this stage in his career. And it's easy to say you want to change the world. It's much harder to actually do it, as I'm sure the founders of Izeni will agree. In order to build the companies that can bring about meaningful change, Utah needs to be at the forefront when it comes to cultivating and attracting the best computer programmers in the world. And it starts right here at home. Teaching children the value of learning to code is vital to the future of our economy and to the success of Utah's startup community. And because we are all currently sitting in an institution of higher learning, I feel compelled to first pose a question and then ignite the passion most college students have for rebellion against the status quo and the establishment. That's possible. And the question is, what can we do to build a startup community here in Utah that we can be proud of? That little girl on the screen is my 5-year-old daughter, Gracie. One of the first stories we published on Beehive Startups was about how the Utah State Office of Education is unintentionally discouraging young girls from becoming software developers by distributing a career pathway document that reads, "Software development is non-traditional for females." Dr. Susan Madsen, who was actually a professor here at UVU, released a study last year on the detrimental effects something as small as the words non-traditional for females can have on a young girl's psyche. And here's a small part of what she said. Cultural and social factors lead to negative stereotypes that affect academic choices and performance levels for girls as early as elementary school. Incorrect assumptions, including beliefs that boys are better in math and more suited to scientific work. In addition, girls frequently receive less encouragement, have fewer role models, and believe they will appear geeky if they like math and science. The biggest misconception may be that young women often believe they do not have the innate ability to succeed. When young women do decide to enter STEM programs, they often lack confidence and feel intimidated in male-dominated courses. And according to Dr. Madsen, the percentage of Utah females graduating from high school who enroll in STEM post-secondary programs is 19.2% compared to 31.2% nationally. Utah can do better. We need more programmers here in Utah. We need more women founders of tech startups here in Utah. And at Beehive Startups, we will continue to do whatever we can to help create a culture and environment that is welcoming to women programmers. But we need your help. I need your help. I want Gracie to know she can do anything she wants, not because her dad told her she can, but because women programmers here in Utah prove that she can. We need your help building an inclusive, cooperative community we can all be proud to call home. And when you leave UVU and start your own companies here in Utah, we want to tell your stories. We want you to write for Beehive Startups to share your experiences and your knowledge with fellow entrepreneurs. If there's a CEO or founder here in Utah you'd like to meet, we'd love to help make that happen. Our success is tied to your success, and most importantly, we genuinely care about the entrepreneurial ecosystem here in Utah, and we'd like to play a small role in its growth. And with that, I'd like to introduce a man who has played a vital role in the early success of Beehive Startups. Gabriel Gunderson is the co-founder and CTO of Izeni, that custom software development firm in Provo I mentioned earlier. And like I said, while I talk and write about stuff, Gabe and his brother Jordan, the other co-founder and CEO of Izeni, actually build stuff. So Gabe.
Well, let's hear it for Clint. Thank you, Clint. If we turn the lights down up front, does that affect the recording? That's perfect. If I had known that, then I would have insisted on it. Thanks, Clint. I'm quite proud of the work that he's done. If you haven't bookmarked it yet, beehivestartups.com. That's the real stuff. I mean, he gets out there and it gets the real story. It's not the big story, but it's the compelling, interesting, small stories. Keep an eye on that. And again, if there was a CEO that you wanted to meet in Utah, you have like almost zero chance without an introduction, right? But if you wanted to, I'll bet you could get Clint on the hook and say, Clint, let's go interview so-and-so for Beehive Startups. And you go with them, and all of a sudden you're in their office asking any question you want. Somebody should take him up on that offer, because it can happen. So anyway, thank you. I actually am not one to toot our own horn. Is that how you say that? But I will say briefly, we're in Provo. We develop software. We've been doing it for 5 years now, and it's super fun. It was extraordinarily hard to get to the point where we felt like we were succeeding and we were making it in this world, but it was worth every effort. So that's all the pitch you're going to get. I guess if you need software development, or you know somebody who's starting a business that has technical requirements, hit us up or just come by for lunch sometime. So who knows what this is? By raise of hands. Get him up there. Come on, you all. Okay, this guy's pretending like he doesn't know. So this is Flappy, right? This is, to me, this is what, like, this is entrepreneurship captured in one slide, because the game is so easy, right? Here are the instructions. You tap the screen. That's it. But if you've played this, you know it's extraordinarily hard. So I downloaded it a couple days ago, and I've only actually played it twice because it was so hard. And I tapped the screen, and it took me like 5 times before I got through the first pipe, right? And that's not uncommon. And then once I got past the first pipe, I didn't get past the first pipe for another 20 times. And then I made it to pipe like 4, and I was like, that's it. I'm never going to beat that. And then you learn that there are people who have made it to like pipe 20. I don't even know what that looks like, or if it's the same stupid thing over and over and over again. But some people are making it to pipe 20. And that's not me. Oops, that is me. Excuse me for a moment. My bad. That's how you know I'm an amateur. So anyway, to me, entrepreneurship isn't especially hard. Well, conceptually, it's not hard, right? There are certain things that you're supposed to do, and you can talk to other entrepreneurs. They can tell you what those things are. You can read it in books. But sometimes it just takes fierce persistence. And sometimes it takes luck, and sometimes it takes both of those things, right? And so if you, I was going to say, if you haven't downloaded this, download it, but who knows? You can't. They've taken it off the store for whatever reason. The dude didn't love success, right? I don't know. There's an interesting story there. So anyway, find a friend who's downloaded it. I mean, I'm like, half of your friends must already have it. And give this a try and just think to yourself, this is what I'm signing up for when I say that I'm going to be an entrepreneur. Just for fun, and nobody's recording this. Who plans on actually starting a business? Awesome. I'm talking to all of you, but mostly you guys, right? When I say, so I'm old, 39. I grew up in the era of skateboarding, right? I lived on a dirt road, and I had 2 skateboards. I was probably a poser, right? I don't know if you've ever tried to skateboard on a dirt road. But my dad was in construction, and we did have access to plywood, so we made this gigantic half pipe, and it really was like 8 feet high with a half a foot of vert, right? In our small carport with a launch ramp no more than 2 feet away from it. So you drop in and zoom and hit this launch ramp. Is that what they call it? A launch? Anyway. So that's, we were done being posers, and we built this half pipe, and we were going to do this, right? We'd read it in Thrasher magazine, and we knew that skateboarding was awesome. So we built it, and I was the very first one to get up there, and I dropped in and busted my leg, both bones. And my short but illustrious skating career was over, right? So I think, this is obviously a poser. We know a poser when we see one. I'm kind of having fun with this. The idea is there are a lot of people who talk about starting businesses, and they continue to talk about starting business. And they continue to talk about it. And guess what? They're still talking about it. And they're going to be at all the networking events. They're going to be at all the business building things, and they're just there. And they're not bad people. They're actually probably smart. They're interested in business, but they know that it's risky and they can't do it. That's fine. But if you're not going to start a business, then find happiness in a full-time job somewhere or doing whatever it is you do. But the time to start a business is now. I'm going to say when you're young. Look, a lot of you are my age, I can see, but some of you are quite a bit younger. But it gets harder as life has more demands, right? So I have 6 kids. And I don't know if I could start Izeni again right now. I was lucky that my wife was super supportive, and I only had, 4 kids, 3 kids, I don't know. But I had fewer kids, and they were all younger, and they required less work. But you take this chance knowing that the odds are against you, that you will likely be a failure, right? And it's okay to be a failure in something, not at everything, because then you're a failure. But it's okay to be successful as a mother or a father and have a failed business venture, even 2 or 3. Because if you don't try and possibly fail, then you'll never know, right? You'll never know if it could have been or what could have been. It'd be far better, in my opinion, to do it and to be unsuccessful than to have not done it. But the chances, right, or the odds get, in my mind, well, let's see, let me clarify. The odds may get better as you get older, but rolling the dice becomes more difficult, right? Because of the responsibilities that typically come with life. So, here's the Can't Fail Cafe. I'm convinced that there is no place on earth, right? Because failure lurks around every corner, and it's actually watching actively for you to come. But there are people with money and with connections and with all this other stuff. And I don't know, I'm looking out, maybe that's you guys. It wasn't me, right? Those people maybe have a little bit of a protection from failure, right? So my number one piece of business advice, and it's really simple, would be to simply and constantly be willing to take a step into the darkness. Now, Shauna will get a kick out of this, and bless her heart, she really is a good person. When Izeni, well, let me just tell you a little bit about how Izeni got started, right? And this is taking a step into the darkness. Jordan and I, we're co-founders. You probably figured out by the last name being the same and a similar resemblance. He's slimming up. I'm not. We're brothers, right? And we've got a pretty tight family. We spend a lot of Sundays together around my mom and dad's dinner table. And my dad had been asking me, there's this Colombian family where one of the daughter's husbands was trying to get a job. And it was a technical job. And he said, Gabe, as a favor, would you review this resume? And I said, sure, I'll look at it. And it's really a great resume, right? Except for the use of yellow in it. I was like, what? Get rid of the yellow for sure. But otherwise, a talented individual. And he did something funny. Maybe this will be lost on some of you, but JavaScript and Java are completely different languages, right? That's a really unfortunate naming business that some idiot in marketing said, hey, let's name this JavaScript, right? Whatever. They're totally different languages, though. And he had written them kind of together, and I was like, oh, so somebody's smiling, somebody knows something about this, or they're just talking about something else. Anyway, I was like, you shouldn't put these two together because as a smart employer, I'm going to look at that and say, oh, this kid doesn't know the difference between Java and JavaScript. Huge red flag, right? Well, he said to me, to his credit, he said, well, I know they're different. I know one is a compiled language and one is a scripting language, but I felt like I didn't want to draw too much attention to scripting languages. Some of you are wondering what the heck is a scripting language. Don't worry about it. But there's this other language called Python that I love that's also a scripting language. And I said to him, oh, by the way, he's in our house, right? He joined us for Sunday dinner, right? I said, oh, I love scripting languages. Python that's my favorite language right now, and that's what we're going to do when we build our business. We're going to write everything in Python, right? And the cool kids will tell you that we've moved on from Python to JavaScript, but whatever. Python's where it's at. Anyway, he's like, oh, I didn't even put Python. I've got 6 years of Python experience. I was like, whoa. Here's a kid who needs a job, who's working at the Albertsons bakery, who has 6 years of Python experience. And so I was like, okay, just hold on for a minute. And I go talk to Jordan and I say, I think we need to hire this kid. And we hadn't started our business yet, right? We'd just been having those long walks and talks, like what could we do if we were going to start a business? And so we made our first hire before we started a business, and that was taking a step into the darkness. I knew that I was going to have to pay somebody else's wage, coming from my small little nest egg, because I had just left my work. But we knew that it was opportunity knocking, right? And so we made that hire, and he was working in my unfinished basement. And we both got our lives together and put things right so that we could start this business, right? It was definitely a step into the darkness. We had no idea. And again, Shauna will find humor in this, but it was like $380 a month to rent these 4 cubicles so that we could graduate from my basement to a place of, a respectable building at Novell. And we wondered, where is that $380 going to come from? We hadn't, that's how broke we were, right? Our cell phone bill is, easily that every month now. It's just a matter of being willing to take that step. And it doesn't change, right? It gets harder. Right now, it's signing a lease for 5 years that's worth more than 5 of your houses you live in. Am I scared to do that? Absolutely. But I'm going to take that step because I remember that's part of getting somewhere in life, is always taking that step into the darkness. I love first of all, I just like pictures. That's why I've got these big, interesting. If I'm boring, the pictures are at least interesting. The title on this is Women's Something Tournament, I can't remember. The part I remember is women. Well, I mean, this isn't an anatomy class. Those look like men in full bathing suits, right? So anyway, they got that one wrong. The thing about diving that I really like is it's a fun. The idea of diving in, let's take that dive. I remember an entrepreneur I really respect saying, well, you take that dive in, but you make sure there's water in the pool, right? Because there are very bad outcomes when you dive and the pool's empty, right? So that says something about your timing and your personal preparation, the availability of capital to keep this business going until it finally gets legs. Also, I love the idea of, you think about an Olympic pool. You think about all your divers are lined up and they're waiting for that whistle or that pistol or whatever it is, and they dive in. Whoops. There we go. That's when I really want your attention. No. And if we're going to take this analogy a little bit further and say this is, you're taking that dive, you're starting your business, and you come back, and the swimmers have been running their laps, and you go get a salty pretzel or whatever, and after 30 minutes you come back and most of the divers are, have cramps and are against the wall holding on. There are a few floating upside down that just didn't make it. There's maybe like one or two people who are, they're not done. They're swimming their guts out, but they're still going. You know what I'm saying? So it's, for me, that's a really colorful reminder of how brutal it can be to start a business. Anyway, say goodbye to the women. The sad truth about your startup or your business is that really nobody cares. When I say cares, I mean cares deeply, right? Like you care about it. If I'm going to assume you have roommates, right? You're freshmen in college, sophomore, whatever. I don't know where you're at. But you start your business, right? And you've got this real Zuckerberg story. You're in your dorm, and you and your buddy figured out this thing, and you're going to start your business, and you share it with your other roommate. And he's going to be like, oh, that's super cool. Hey, is that your milk in the fridge? Can I have a little bit of that? And you're like, dude, I'm starting a business, and you're trying to get my skim milk off me. And the truth is your mom, dad, they may be excited for you, but they don't know what you're doing. They don't understand that passion that's driving you. Even people who are supposed to care don't care, for the most part, right? This changes when you have success. But if you haven't had any success and you haven't proven yourself, nobody really cares but you and your founder. You might think, angel investors, they're dying to meet people like me. After all, we've worked so hard and we're so smart and we've got this wonderful idea. Isn't it their life's ambition to give me money? And you realize that they won't return your calls. They don't answer your emails. Then you start getting really scared. Like, people who I thought would be stoked to hear about my business. They give me lip service, but ultimately they don't care yet, right? So we're kind of on a downer a little bit, but we're gonna come up. And what happens is you find that it's even hard for you to be enthusiastic anymore, right? The bloom is off the rose. This is hard. This actually kind of sucks. Not having money can cause real difficulties at home, particularly when it comes time to pay bills, right? That's when you need money the most. And bills don't care. Bill collectors don't care. I think part of how Jordan and I made it was just a willingness to endure crap that most people would not endure. And when it was down and it was hard, I wish I would have put the slide in here, but we have a slide where we have like $60,000 of credit card debt and $8 in our bank account, right? And this was after a year and a half, right? And it's hard, right? You're this mopey-lipped little kid, and you just don't want to go on. And anybody with common sense would have said, that's enough. We should accept failure and go get good jobs because we're fairly employable, right? There's a serious opportunity cost. And we paid it, boy. We paid it in full. So it's hard to be enthusiastic. We end at 50 after here, is that right? And so 45 if we want questions. Oh, I'm going to cheat you out of some good content here. So here we're kind of on the, okay, enough of the sad stuff, enough of the hardship. I think in order to be successful, you need to know where you're going. Jordan and I, we look around and we've built a successful software development shop, one that most people would and should be proud of, and I am proud of it. But I know that that's not our destination. In fact, I'll take just a minute to tell you how we got there. There's an entrepreneur in the valley that many of you know, and I respect quite a bit. His name's Josh Coates. You may not know him, but you'll know Mosey, right? And you may not know Mosey, but you'll know Instructure or Canvas, right? I know you all know Canvas. So a fun little bit there is the Instructure guys, or the people who brought you Canvas, started in cubicles right next to us. But they got an infusion of cash, and whew, that's how you hit the eject button on our little startup incubator over there, and you graduate to bigger and better things. So Jordan and I have been 100% bootstrapped. Every penny that goes in came from his down payment on a house that he put off and home equity that I had. I mean, it was all us. We didn't even have rich uncles or aunts to borrow and beg from. So anyway, where was I? Knowing where you're going. I don't know where I'm going at this moment. It's going to come to me. Well, Dev Shop, thank you. So one thing Jordan and we excel at is dreaming big, right? And it's super easy for us to get ahead of ourselves. And we had this, and we really specialize in telephony and communications. And so if you've heard of Jive, not Jive Communications, that was a slip-up edit. If you've heard of, no, there are lots of them. The one that's big and successful now. Wow. This is like not being able to remember your mother's name. This should be right on the tip of my tongue. Twilio, our non-technical, boom, give it up. Twilio. So those guys raised tons of money, and they were doing what we wanted to do, and I think in an inferior way. So we had these great plans, right? And I talked to Josh Coates after one of these, these things, right, where he's sharing his expertise or whatever. And he said, oh, you don't stand a chance with that. Platforms are super hard to build. You don't have the experience. You don't have the access to capital. You're out of your league. And I was like, oh my gosh. I didn't want to hear that. We just, arranged our lives in every detail so that we can build this business. So we went home and we literally changed. Back then, we didn't have the word pivot, right? But now you guys are really cool and have words for changing your mind. It's called pivoting. So we pivoted because we said, look, if Josh thinks we can't do it, why would we think we can do it, right? So what we said is, we need to get money right now, right? And that's, there we go. So we need to get money right now if this is going to work, right? We see one guy knows who Johnny Cash is. You can see the smile on his face. For the rest of you, this is not Eminem or Bieber. This is when music was real. Johnny Cash. So we had, our bank account is just going down and down and down. And also, in 2008, there was this thing called Rest in Peace, Good Times in the startup community where the bottom just fell out. And they said, if you have money, hold on to it jealously. And if you don't have money, forget it. You're not getting any, right? And this is going to be a year or more. And we were planning on raising money. So we had Josh tell us our idea is crap. And the economy is telling us, you've made a really bad decision about when to start a business. And there we are. 2 guys, no jobs, an employee, no clients, nothing. So we got somebody on the hook, and we said, it was a pretty small gig. It was about $10,000, which sounded huge to us then, but turns out it's not that much. We said, oh yeah, how we typically do this, we'll come get the first half before we start. Oh, that's going to be cool. Excellent. I happen to be in Salt Lake. Excellent. So I'm in Spanish Fork, right? Grab my wife's minivan, barreling down the freeway, right, to get that cash and slam it in the bank so we can cover, this paycheck that we're now accountable for. Anyway, we figured out very quickly if you're going to make it, you have to have money. It could be through revenue, which I think is the very best way, but it might be a long time before you can get to revenue. So know what you're going to do. It might be the rich aunt, the rich uncle. It might be your life savings, but be super careful spending your life savings. But whatever it is, it's going to take time, and time equals money. And remember that cash is king. All right. So this lady knows the duck market probably about as well as anybody. I mean, bless her heart, she's a hardworking woman, I'm sure of it. But I know she wears essence of duck all over town. But she knows ducks, right? There's no question about that. So a lot of times what happens is you'll say, I've got this idea, and the market is huge. And you will come off as a novice if you say, should we get out of poultry? Let's go back to skateboarding in the late 80s. If you could sell every kid a skateboard, you would be so rich, right? And this is the thinking that gets you into trouble. Because nobody knows ducks better than this lady, but she's not going to sell them to anybody who's not walking down that street. So there's a market. And then there's the actual addressable market. How many of those kids who so desperately want to pay you for a skateboard will actually see your rinky-dinky ad in the back of Thrasher magazine? Or how many of them are going to walk down small town USA and say, hey, Mom, can you please take me into the skate shop? And, maybe the kid gets in there, but his mom's not going to buy him the board. So how many boards can you actually sell? That's the question you have to ask yourself. You have to be real about what is the market potential, and what portion can I address? And if you go to somebody who you're looking for mentorship, or you're looking for cash, and you overstate how much of the market you can actually get, you're just going to look a little naive. And don't do that. All right, did I skip something? No. All right. So this gal's got a great sense of humor. That's clearly not a dumbbell, but some sort of railroad part from Russia or something. I don't know. Anyway, she's pretending like she's trying to lift it. There's no way in heck. I don't know. That thing must weigh 2,500 pounds. But she's got a great sense of humor. And we kind of need to have a sense of humor when we look at ourselves, right? We need to say, what is it about me that's actually not that great? And it might be that you're not very good at accounting. I'm not. Much to Jordan's credit, he's taken care of all of our bookkeeping and all of our taxes and all of our payroll since day one, and I have not had to worry about that. And if I had to worry about that, I don't think I'd still be interested in doing business, right? And he's great at it, and he brings a lot of value. And so know what your weaknesses are, and know what you need to find in early employees and in co-founders, right? Jordan and I, a lot of people will tell you don't go into business with your family. And I will probably echo that, right? Things are probably going to go bad. Do you really want to go bad with your brother who you used to like, or your sister who's been sweet to you all of her life? You probably don't want to. But with Jordan and I don't think we could have made it if we weren't brothers. So again, to his credit, our rule was the load is equal, but in the early days, you put everything in and you took only what you needed. And I had a larger family and a home at the time, and so I took more every single month for probably 2 years or more. We're now even, right? Almost. He reminds me. So, but I mean, I don't know. There might be somebody in here who's a perfect partner for you. But would they also be willing to do that? I needed a partner who would do that, and I found it in Jordan. So he helped fill in where I had weaknesses, and I have plenty of weaknesses that continue to get filled in. So you all know who this is, Mr. Miyagi, right? Kind of a dumb movie, but when I thought mentor, this guy came to mind above anybody else. I don't think it would be a bad idea to seek out a mentor, somebody who's been there, somebody who is at that destination, who you can say, hey, how did you get there, by the way? And what mistakes am I making? And in some ways, I have mentors that I don't have a formal mentor relationship with, but I watch them and I listen to them and I know I trust them, right? And so they're, unbeknownst to them, they're mentoring me. That's kind of lame. I'd probably go for something a little bit more personal, but I tend to be too busy. I have reached out to a few people, and I don't really have a formal mentor, but I have a lot of people that I look forward to hearing what they say. And I'm going to be super quick here because we're about up on time. Be honest. If you can't be honest, if you have an honesty problem, don't start. Don't do that to the world. Your employees deserve better. Your co-founders deserve better. Your clients, your customers deserve better. Your spouse, your children, you deserve better. If you can't be honest, don't even start. I'm not going to go into this, but I will say I had a super interesting experience while we were waiting here. I have super bad cotton mouth right now, and I knew I needed water. Shauna. So I went and bought a Gatorade. But as I was looking over the selection there, some kid comes up and he puts he ducks down like this and he's watching and he puts a root beer right into his satchel and starts taking off. And I called him on it. I said, hey, you can't just take stuff. You think you're better than the rest of us? And, he's surprised anyone saw him, but even more so that anybody called him on it. So he sulked over there and put it back and kind of did this little thing. And I could not believe that there are people in this world whose integrity is worth less than a can of root beer. Right? So when you're in business, you're starting to talk about thousands, tens, or hundreds of thousands of dollars. There has to be an element of trust. Now, not blind trust, but if you can't trust somebody, then you can't do business with them. People come to us all the time and say, hey, I want you to build this thing. I'm going to hurry up on this. And they say, but I need you to sign this NDA. An NDA is a non-disclosure agreement for those of you who may not. They're really crap. They don't stand up and join us. They don't stand up in court that well. They're hard to enforce. How do you really know what somebody said to somebody else in a private conversation? And so even if you have an NDA in place, I wouldn't tell a word to that person unless you trusted them. In fact, I would say forget the NDA because it makes you look a little bit like a novice. And if you don't trust the person, don't share your idea. But if you do trust them, move ahead because that trust allows it. We have a great deal of trust between Jordan and I. Our employees, we trust as a rule. Our clients have to trust us. If you can't trust, then don't start. That's it.